I'm Suzanne Rath. I'm a speaker, executive health coach, and corporate well-being facilitator located in Cairns. Tune into this episode of the podcast to hear how you and your team can be more purposeful, productive, and prosperous by taking back 20% more control over your health.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, where we bring you the stories and strategies of industry leaders who are out there changing the game. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today I'm thrilled to introduce to you a guest who's truly embodying resilience, passion, and a vision for better health. Now, Suzanne, how are you doing today?
I'm really well. Thank you, Prosper. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Well, the pleasure is all mine. We had to wait until you'd finished all your marathons and everything else that you've been doing to get you on the show. So it's equally exciting that we managed to get a glimpse while maybe you're resting in between, the running that you've been doing lately. Now, for those that are wondering, what it is that I am going on about, Suzanne is not just a speaker, author, or health entrepreneur, as some of you might know her. She's actually a woman on a mission to inspire a million other women to take charge of their own health. Now, from bouncing back after her own life-changing accident to running award-winning clinics in Cairns, she is, and also being a health coach, she has combined her 20 years in healthcare and her leadership and also business acumen to create workshops and keynotes that actually inspire action, accountability, and appreciation. And I don't know, you might be wondering how I know all of this. Me and Suzanne have known each other for quite a while, and obviously we high-five each other on the internet there. So I've been looking at what she's been doing, and that's the reason why we got her on the show. But did I actually tell you she's actually planning to cycle across South America in January? So we wanted to get her on the show before she got all rich and famous and she would forget us mere mortals. Now, talk about, first of all, taking a scenic route to success. Now, you don't want to miss any of what she's about to share with us today. So let's dive in. Suzanne, I could go on and on. This obviously you've got a track record of everything else that comes along with it, but it defeats the whole purpose of having you on the show today. Tell us a little bit about your journey so far and how your passion has actually evolved over the years.
Yeah, so I guess I am on to Suze 3.0 now in terms of my purpose. Started out 20 odd years ago studying physiotherapy in Dublin. So grew up in the country in Ireland, got into physiotherapy, one, because it was a very clear career path. And that's really the direction that we were pushed on then. So as soon as you said in school that you were going to do teaching or nursing or physio, that was a very clear thing. And everyone was very happy because you were going to get a job, hopefully a good government job with a government pension and, have 2 babies, and that would be you for life. And so I kind of, delved into different areas of physiotherapy. I studied sports medicine. I worked with fairly high level sport for a while back in Ireland. And then I took myself off on a new adventure and moved to Australia. So been in Australia for just under 13 years. My second purpose, so my Suze 2.0, was is my health clinics, which were basically set up out of a vision to provide the type of clinic that I would have wanted to go to. So just over 10 years ago in Sydney, I was cycling home from work. It was a beautiful sunny day. I was in Alexandria. I was looking forward to going to the Newtown Hotel. It was the Newtown Hotel's first birthday party that night. The preachers were playing. Coasting downhill through a green light, and then all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw somebody start to indicate, and she pulled right across in front of me, and I stopped myself with my face. Pulled on the brakes, but yeah, my face took the majority of the impact. So I ended up with multiple jaw fractures, but really it was the secondary injuries. So I had a mild traumatic brain injury, a post-concussion syndrome, spent 2 years essentially with chronic fatigue. I had constant headache, crazy anxiety. I don't remember ever having anxiety before this, and this was absolutely crippling. Like I felt like I was going mad. And real noise sensitivity and affecting my ability to socialize. So around the time we had a lot of 30th birthday parties, I couldn't enjoy them because if, I went to your birthday, if I was talking to you, if somebody was over on my other side and they were talking, I actually wouldn't be able to focus on what you were saying. So it was really, really exhausting. And around that time, I gave up 2 of my 3 physio jobs. I was working in a really unfulfilling job for 3 days a week that, just paid the bills but didn't challenge me. And I was still coming home, getting into bed at 5 p.m. And so it was a real massive life-changing thing for me. And at the time, I went around to, a whole lot of health professionals. I was essentially unwilling to take no for an answer. And a lot of the information that I got was diagnoses, but a diagnosis doesn't come with a magic pill. So I really had to put together a team around me because I wanted to take back control of my own health, because I didn't want to accept that this was the way life was going to be, because I didn't want to accept that there was a before where, I'd qualified for the Boston Marathon and I was go, 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 and that this was the new me. I just wasn't willing to accept that. So I embarked on a whole mind-body medicine journey. I put together a team of psychology, craniosacral, different physios, massage, integrative doctor. And when I set up my own clinics, I wanted to provide that service for other people. So we would actually case manage complex conditions. I became really known for working with complex conditions like post-concussion syndrome, long COVID, tick-borne issues. And we provide a whole body and mind service. So very much treat the whole person, not just a body part, like psychology, physio, occupational therapy, whole range of services. And then what I realized after nearly 8 years of growing that is that we have 2 major issues. One being people actually doing the thing. So we have all of this medical information out there, and yet the vast majority of society are still waiting for the diagnosis. They're still waiting for the magic scan. They still have all these limiting beliefs that are actually incorrect about how they maybe don't feel right just because they're older, or, it's their genetics, or it's someone else's fault. And then the second thing I see coming out as a leader and a business owner is the lack of responsibility taking. So if we can empower people to actually take back control of their own health, I look at a lot of common HR problems, and burnout is one of them, that actually have just as much of a self-management, a self-leadership, and a self-looking after your health component as they do a workplace component. So yeah, that's me. That's my third purpose.
Absolutely, absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us through that journey. I mean, while you're talking, I was just envisioning that young Suzanne who's putting her hand up and saying, yeah, I want to work in health. And obviously that is the channel that you got given. Is it just something that befell on you, or so many people end up doing these jobs just predicated on what society has bestowed upon them?
Look, I think there was a big societal thing there. As I mentioned, going into a job that had a very clear career pathway was certainly favored. So if I hadn't have done physio, I looked to do journalism. I really like creating. And so a lot of my creative outlet now is in writing. It's in, creating a vision for the clinic, creating visions for myself, and coaching as a thing in itself is quite creative, or, creating bespoke corporate workshops or bespoke corporate programs is quite creative. So I've channeled a lot of my creative energy into that. So I think it was a combination of, also physio offers a real diversity. Diversity is really important to me. Like my areas of genius, I talk a lot about the working genius and knowing what your areas of genius are in work. And one of my core pillars of health is actually vitality, and it's building that vitality in the workplace and outside the workplace. And part of that is actually finding the work that energizes you. And so the work that energizes me is actually ideas and big picture thinking and yeah, that constant growth and change and learning and so on. So that I think the idea to grow, the ability to grow and the ability to go between different specialities was really appealing to me.
Absolutely. No, you did mention, you wanting variety and a bit of diversity here and there. Was that the reason that got you to come to Australia?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's all about the next adventure. I am a big fan of leading your life and not just managing it. I think so many people just manage their life. They just react to things. And I see this even within the business setting. I have been a judge of awards categories as well as having won awards. And having a goal, having a clear vision, getting everybody behind that vision is really, really important, and aligning that vision with both the company values, but also your unique individual values. Um, yeah, we need to be proactive. We need to be adaptable, particularly in the modern world. And so to do that, we also need to look after ourselves as individuals and, be proactive about how we lead our own lives.
Absolutely. So 10 years ago, 11 years ago, you did mention a turning point, which was that cycling accident. And obviously, it would have been traumatic in as much as you clearly remembered where you were going, what was happening, who was there, and things of that nature. Now, when things like that happen to people in their lives, they usually just go into fetal position and say, I just want to heal and I want to be okay. But that's not the direction you took. You went all out and you said, I really want to figure this out. Now, first of all, is this something that is available to a lot of people, or is it yet again another Suzanne, episode of just wanting to make sure you get the answers to things?
I would like it to be available to a lot of people. And I guess for me, that is the role of health coaching and speaking and all of the corporate things that I deliver. It's not about reacting, it's not about putting a band-aid on things, but it's actually about identifying the next step, right? And so I guess for me, when I came home from hospital, for example, after I had my first surgery, my teeth were wired together. I'm a big talker. I couldn't talk. My teeth were wired together. So even that feeling of feeling locked in and the inability to communicate, health professionals were talking to me because I would have to write things on a whiteboard. And so no one's got the patience for that, right? So they asked me a question, and then they would turn to my partner at the time for the answer. And he's going, well, she's just got her teeth wired together. Like, she hasn't just lost the capacity to think, right? But yeah, I guess that feeling of not having a voice and that feeling of feeling locked in, coupled with this, intense pain and this crazy anxiety and so on. For me at that point in time, to envisage getting back to where I was, which was like, 3 jobs and high energy and theater reviewing and out with friends, every second night and hosting dinner parties and running the Boston Marathon, like all that kind of stuff was such a jump. And the role of, health coaching and corporate work and so on is just identifying the next step. So I have my tool that I use is vital health pillars. And my aim is to get people to take back just 20% more control. And so even at the end of a keynote with me, the idea is that people will have identified the one of 5 areas and they'll have identified their next step. It's like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with just one step. What's the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? That's how we achieve big goals in life. Like keeping that vision, keeping that idea of where we want to be, but then we have to actually be who we need to be to go where we want to go.
Absolutely. I like that a lot. And while that is all happening, you started assembling your own team. And now you've created that for other people who might not have the empowerment or the knowledge of knowing who to bring about, for people. Can you maybe just walk us through what people are actually being exposed to out there if this what you have created does not exist? Because fish do not see the water that they swim in.
So, what I see in the health world is number one, a massive amount of information, but not a lot of understanding, and not a lot of empowerment. So there's still a very top-down model of people will go to a psychologist if they have a psychological diagnosis. They won't necessarily think to go to a psychologist or a psychotherapist or a counselor or whatever just to feel a bit better, right? So if they don't have this, we see this a lot. If they don't have a specific diagnosis, they think, oh no, that's just for people that are really mentally unwell. That's not to help me with, managing my stress or living a better life. They'll go to the GP if they're sick, and GPs are fantastic at general practice. But if you fit in the gray area, if you just don't feel 100%, but your bloods are kind of okay and whatever, but that you actually don't feel all that great, there's often not a lot they can do for you. And a really key example of that, and one of the reasons why I talk a lot, particularly to women and particularly to people in midlife, is the changes that happen us in midlife. So women are affected disproportionately because we have a large number of hormonal changes that start to happen from, our late 30s onwards. And they can really affect us in terms of focus and concentration and mood and bodily changes like aching, inflammation, and just not being able to do the things that we used to be able to do. But that has a real knock-on effect into the workplace. So empowering people to be able to recognize some of those symptoms and actually look around and go, well, who do I need on my team to help with that is really important. I don't think that healthcare is changing quickly enough. There's a lot of talk about preventative health, but it's very basic. It's very one size fits all. And a lot of the time, the messaging relies on negativity around something that's in the future. So, for example, we know that the average lifespan now is just into our early 80s in Australia. But actually, the average time that you get chronic diseases like diabetes and heart disease and so on is at around 63. So you're potentially living for 20 years with crappy health, but so many people just see this as part of, okay, well, that's the way it is, as opposed to taking back the control over it. But also when we try to motivate people depending on a negative outcome. So we try to motivate people depending on, okay, well, don't get heart disease, don't get diabetes, don't get whatever. That's kind of in the future. I don't live my life right now thinking about, oh God, I really don't want to get diabetes. But some of the things that we do now can have an almost immediate effect on things like our mental health, our energy levels, our relationships, how we show up in the workplace, and how we live our lives day to day. So if we can focus on some of those positive outcomes, so for example, what we put into our mouths, so intake is the second part of my vital health tool. If we can tune into what we put into our body, how that makes us feel, that's having an almost immediate effect on our mental health. So if we then want to show up better at home, if we want to have more focus and more ability to have a sense of purpose and productivity and prosperity in work, that's one of those pillars that we may need to look at, and it's going to have that immediate effect on us.
Because I obviously believe you can't do well if you don't feel well. And obviously, if you're, obviously for a lot of people, they work from 16 to 65, in some sort of a career, and then they retire. And then, like you say, that's run about the time they now pick up another full-time career of having to go to the hospital until obviously, you know what I mean? So it's like you've never really lived and sort of enjoyed your life there because work was taking up much of your time. Now you've got to try and survive and be in all these health places. Now, you're working with a lot of leaders and you're helping them sort of achieve longevity and purpose. That's what I'm sort of sensing with the
Hmm.
work that you're doing there. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that a lot of successful people often have about maintaining their own health? Because I think a lot of them are just, yeah, just burning out there, and that seems to be the biggest buzzword these days. Yet there's so much abundance and more life that people can enjoy.
I'll do it later is a big
Mm.
thing. That's a huge thing. It's I'm going to keep working, 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 and then I'll do this when the kids move out of home, or I'll do this when I retire. The time to start living is now. I think there's a big misconception around what well-being and self-care is. So self-care is not, going for a massage in the midst of a 16-hour day and, checking your emails on the way to and from and having maybe an hour of respite and then just going back into da 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 da. Self-care is number one, it's whatever self-care means to you. So, and it's also about being intentional with things that you do in your day. A lot of workplace well-being programs don't really land, one because they don't meet the organizational objectives, and two because they're not realistic. So if somebody comes to me and they say, oh, what you need to do, which is not a coaching thing, right? Coaching is working with the person and working out what's relevant to them. But if somebody comes to me and says, what you need to do is you need to meditate for 2 hours a day, I'm not going to do that. That's not one of my values. It's not, one of my priorities. I would prefer to spend that time doing 20 minutes of yoga, 45 minutes walking my dog, and actually doing energizing work. I guess the third thing that we have in society as a whole is this idea of work-life balance. And this is a really big misconception. So people think their life is going to be saved by a 4-day work week or by working from home or by working less. And one of the things that happened to me and, almost caused me to burn out was this feeling that I had to be this constant mom and dad to the team. There's so many memes and clickbait things on burnout, and none of them actually align with what the research is telling us. So Christina Maslach is a key researcher in burnout. She's created the Maslach Burnout Inventory, and she talks about two key areas. So one is the workplace. One is obviously making sure that you don't have a toxic workplace, that you don't micromanage, that you give autonomy, that you've clear pay scales, all of those things, which lots of us are doing. And the second thing is actually self-care. It's self-regulation, and it's stepping up to lead in ways that you can. So it's taking responsibility and trying to create the change that you need instead of putting that blame onto other people and expecting other people to fix it for you.
So it's like a relearning of what we're already going through, because
Yeah.
from what you're saying, you're actually emphasizing creating healthy habits, which now become part of the leadership, journey that a lot of people that are going through. But in your view, how does obviously physical wellness, like obviously showing up and everything else, translate then into better leadership or workplace engagement, especially these days where we've got remote teams and you don't necessarily have to show up, AI is there for you, things like that?
So firstly, leaders that look after themselves really model good behavior. There's a lot to be said for working within our energetic patterns. I think if there was actually one key thing that I could teach to everyone in the workplace, that would be it. So it's setting your main priorities for the day and that proactive work. So going, what is my end goal? What's the core vision? And what are the major things that I need to do? Which also includes the things you need to say no to. And so when I see people, whether it's leaders or team members, and they say, oh, I can't work on this core project, I never get anything done, but then they're coming in the morning and probably spending their most energized time scrolling through emails and reacting to things and putting out fires, they're just wasting time. And they're doing work that, number one, probably isn't energizing to them. So they finish the day, and I've been there. You finish the day and you think, oh, I don't know what I did. You're not fulfilled. You've been putting out fires and you're just running around pandering to absolutely everyone else. Whereas if you're structuring your day, being proactive about your day, and, you know, really setting in place those key projects, then, you know, being really disciplined around that, you actually feel more energized by the day. You feel like you've achieved something and your body thanks you for it. I'm also a big promoter of being intentional with things that we do in our lives. So it's intentional about everything that we put into our days. One of my core tools, which I use with people, is a time tracker, because you can look at how you invest your time and, you know, work out how much of that you actually need to be doing. Like how much of that is energizing you, how much of it is moving the needle, how much of it is something that maybe could be delayed or, you know, deleted or delegated to someone else. And repeatedly doing that as you move through each stage in your life, it's kind of the thing of like, what got you here won't get you there. So that constant coaching, self-reflection, and moving to the next level is really, really important. Don't know if I answered
Absolutely.
you there.
I like that. I remember we spoke about the Pomodoro the other time, you know, that
Mm,
setup of how you can actually manage your day, and so much can be done. And I remember letting you know that I use the Pomodoro to actually read
yeah, yeah,
consistently, and you know, going to as far as maybe 4 hours a day, because there's all those 30-minute segments within your life. And you brought in a very interesting word, you know, in this conversation, which is being intentional. Now,
mm,
just looking back at who you've become and where you're headed to, you were intentional about the team that you put together to look after your health. And not
mm.
only that, you went on and started, you know, on the business front, and you were intentional again about the people that you brought into your space. And you've had some really amazing mentors along the way. You know, how did, you know, mentors like our mutual friend, Angela Cedra and Andrew Griffiths, and I think you've also worked with Keith Abraham, sort of impact the journey that you're on, and you know, now helped you be, do, and have what it is that you now present to others?
Look, I mean, I'm biased here, obviously, as coach, but the Harvard Business Review tells us that you are 77% more likely to succeed if you have an ass kicker. You know, mentioned before that what got you here isn't going to get you there. So lots of people, their entire career has maybe been in corporate, and then they leave to go set up a business, and they think, oh, I'm not a business owner. I actually don't know how to be a business owner. So you need to find other people that have been a successful business owner and can coach you to do the same. And so for me, my whole career had been in either health boards or in small businesses. So, you know, I own a medium-sized business now. It's very successful. We have 4 clinics. That's great. And I can wear a lot of hats. But I say didn't know how to run a speaker business. So that's where I worked with Andrew and Keith. And I think, you know, having Angela is an amazing connector, and she's an amazing strategist, so she can look at things really, really clearly. So she has helped me both within our clinics to put together a scorecard, and also personally with connection, and actually almost giving me that confidence to put myself out there. Andrew has a really great saying that I love, Andrew Griffiths, where he says the only people without imposter syndrome are the ones that should have it. So for all of us in life, if we want to get to another level, there's going to be this equal and opposite part of us that's almost pulling us going, no, 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 you can't do that, because sometimes that level seems so big. And so working with a coach or a mentor just enables you to put the little steps in place to get to that level. So you're not going, okay, I don't run at all. I want to run a marathon, and constantly focused on what a huge goal a marathon is. You're working with a coach, or you're working with a program, and you're going, okay, I just run every day. And, you know, after 4 weeks, I can run like a 5K. And after 12 weeks, I can run a 10K or whatever it is. So it's the steps to get to there that, really having those accountability partners and mentors and so on is invaluable.
Absolutely. I like the word that you used right at the start, having an ass kicker, because so many people will not hold themselves accountable, or they let themselves off the hook. But if you know you're accountable to somebody else to perform and to actually give a result, what that will do for you is, if you can't do it for yourself, you do it for the other person, and eventually you get the results that you're looking after. And talking about ass kicking, you also do the same for people in your
Mm.
mastering midlife malaise and also busting burnout, if I got that correctly.
Yeah, yeah,
What
yeah.
is it that people can expect in these workshops?
Yeah, so even, and I mentioned before with keynotes, even in a, 45-minute lunch and learn with me, the goal is not that it's just an inspirational speech where people go, oh, that was lovely. And then a week later, they think, what was she talking about again? So the goal is they identify that one key point and they share it. They share their one key action that they can take steps on that day with the person next to them. So they automatically have that accountability partner. Now, when I run, say, half day and full day workshops, obviously I tailor them to the needs of the organization. But to use an example, one which I have done a couple of times is I actually have got people almost coaching each other. So they have these little accountability groups within the workplace. They learn how to answer, how to ask questions in a better way, so almost motivational interviewing. And they build, number one, a better relationship with each other. Number two, an idea of maybe what their workers or co-workers may be going through. And it might be something as simple as highlighting a lack of sleep. So they have a little bit more empathy for each other. And three, they have a target that they want to go away and work on. And it might be, I'm going to put my phone away at 7:30 p.m. so that I have a better night's sleep tonight. They have that little check-in point with each other. So it's not that they've gone to a talk and it's been inspiring and wonderful, but it doesn't meet any organizational objectives. All of the things on the vital health pillars, if people pick just one of them, they're going to meet organizational objectives because people are going to take more responsibility for themselves. So they're going to be more accountable, more action taking, and hopefully more appreciative.
Absolutely. And where would people go to if they want to check out when your next workshop is, or just get to find out a little bit more about you?
So I post daily on LinkedIn and also on my website, which is suzannerath.com.au. I have 3 of my best free resources available for download, which are the vital health pillars, a boundary setting tool, and a time tracker. So that's a really good place to start.
Absolutely. I definitely am usually one of the first people to comment on your posts because they're so educational, inspiring, and actually help people to want more, be more, and have more. Now, for a lot of people, they might be thinking, your medical clinics are probably out there in far north Queensland, and how can we sort of, be in touch? You've obviously given us this LinkedIn access, but you've actually transitioned from managing clinics to actually coaching and speaking engagement. So you could
Mm.
literally be in a hole near us anytime soon. First of all, what was the inspiration around this shift, and how does this sort of complement all the work that you're doing to now help others live better?
So, yeah, really, my vision with the clinics was to create that multidisciplinary space. The sort of BHAG goal was and is to help 10% of the Cairns population to live happier, healthier lives, and we're over 70% of the way there. So that's moving along really nicely. But as I mentioned before, the problem was with people actually the doing and the feeling empowered to take back control of their health. And 20 years as physiotherapist, masters in sports medicine, lived experience of thriving after adversity, endurance running, And I like to think that I lead my life, but also being an award-winning business leader and learning a lot of those leadership skills and so on have really taught me that we just have this ongoing issue of people feeling empowered to look after their own health. And, as I said, there's a real knock-on effect of that into the workplaces.
Absolutely.
So that's really driven me. The ability to impact on more people. So you mentioned my vision is to inspire 1 million people to take back more control over their health. And so, yeah, I can travel, I can run things on Zoom, and yeah, it just opens up a whole world of hopefully influencing and helping more people.
Absolutely. You're not only running things on Zoom, you're actually running ultra marathons and scuba diving in the Galapagos. All of that stuff is happening,
Yeah, yeah.
while you are obviously helping others be do and have a happier existence. Now, you're on a goal, right? To run 50 marathons before you turn 50. What are we doing so far? What's the count?
18. So
Wow.
I turned 40 this year. So now my math's off the top of my head. I think it's about 3 point something marathons that I need to do a year. I'm running a backyard ultra
Wow.
in a couple of weeks' time. So that, unless if things go horribly wrong, will be number 19. And I've signed up for the Cairns Marathon next year, for Noosa Ultra Trail, and I'll probably put another one or two into the mix. But yeah, for me, this gives me a goal. It gives me a focus. It gives me a purpose, so that I have a focus with my training. And it also meets my 3 highest values, which are growth, travel, and health. But yeah, having that purpose and having that vision and that goal is really important for me. Something that might surprise you is, I don't know if you've ever done a tool, it's by Gretchen Rubin, called The 4 Tendencies. And it's actually free. So anyone who wants to do it's really quite interesting. So we as people have 4 tendencies of behavior. So an upholder will be both internally and externally accountable. So they will be accountable to themselves. An obliger will be very externally accountable. And then there's a questioner who kind of questions everything. And then a rebel who's just accountable whenever they feel like it. So you maybe don't necessarily want to hire a rebel, but I'm actually an obliger. And so people will say to me, oh, you're so accountable. You're so accountable. I have put in place all of these structures in my life because I know that I'm more externally accountable. So that I know that if I was left to my own devices with no structure and no vision and no goals, I could quite easily spend my day running around fighting fires and, fixing things for other people and checking my emails and doing social media posts. And then getting to the end of the day and going, well, I'm too tired, I can't train. And so everything I do in my life in terms of goal setting, planning, coaches that I use, I have a great running coach. It is about removing the barriers to me being accountable to myself so I can run my marathons.
Absolutely. So people will be thinking, "Oh my God, how did you do all of that?" I mean, you're talking about doing the Cairns marathon. You're not only running the marathons in Cairns, you actually the businesswoman of the year in Cairns, and everybody should literally be Jennifer.
last year's. Yeah, but I have handed over that crown to another amazing woman. But yeah, that definitely was a great thing for us.
But obviously, you are ticking all these boxes and you are achieving all of these sort of accolades. How has all this, obviously, accountability and recognition impacted you both personally and professionally? Just so that people have an understanding of, because somebody would rather be like, you know what, I'll just Netflix and chill and eat potato chips and be this couch potato and life is good, without actually reaching out and really extending and applying ourselves, because so many people could be living a whole lot better, but they just choose, to do the easiest, path of
Yeah.
least resistance.
So I think it's really important to remember that growth comes from discomfort. There's a great saying, the magic lies in the work that we're avoiding. So yeah, looking at what the work that you're avoiding is really useful. I think in life it's really important though to know your values, and what you talk about, think about, or spend most of your time doing is a really good indicator of what your values are. And knowing your values makes it really easy to then say no to things if they don't align with your values. It makes it easier to set boundaries, and it makes it easier for you to achieve things. So for example, if you get somebody who's working 80 hours a week and they say, I really value family, but they never spend any time with their family, then they probably don't, right? Like, but they may value financial security, which then helps their family. And that acknowledgement of and knowing yourself is really, really important, because it kind of allows you to give yourself a little bit of a break, to get rid of some of that comparison, which is another thing that really rises through midlife. Like, we as humans have this natural U-shaped curve of happiness, and it's shown that we hit our sort of late 30s to 40s and so on. And part of the reason for our dissatisfaction is we start comparing ourselves to people that maybe have things that we don't even value. So getting to know yourself in that sense and living a life that aligns with your values is really important. And so if Netflix and relaxing on the couch, if that's meeting your values, spending time with family, and if that energizes you, then that's amazing. Like, none of us are here to judge people for what they choose to invest their time in, but I think we could all be a little bit better at being intentional with our time and looking at what really energizes us. So in our leisure time, that's another thing that I discuss. Like, is your leisure time actually giving you energy, or is it draining your energy? If you finish work and your idea of de-stressing is drinking a bottle of wine and having a complain, well, how do you feel the next day? So whereas if you're having a glass of wine with a friend and that's meeting your value of connection, and the next day you think, oh, that was so great, I'm so glad I saw that person for a wine, it was amazing, we had a great chat, and you feel really energized by it, then great. It's kind of asking yourself what future you is going to feel about what you're doing.
Oh, I like that. And speaking of future you, I mean, one of your values is all about growth. And it's really showcasing and the way you have progressed and what it is that you're doing, and even future paced yourself with the 50 marathons, in 50 years type setup. If you would maybe have an opportunity to look back and, just maybe look back at what you've done, because I think was it Steve Jobs that mentioned we can only connect the dots looking forwards. You cannot connect the dots looking back. Oh no, connect the dots looking backwards. You cannot connect the dots looking forwards. What would you maybe say to the younger Suzanne Rath, who's just starting out her career in healthcare, knowing what you know now about life and everything else that happened in between, and how you then want to proceed moving forward?
I definitely would tell myself that you can achieve more than you ever thought possible.
Wow.
Um, and I think the second thing is the idea that your network is your net worth, right? And that's not sometimes people see networking as this terrible thing, or they see you as like, it's like it's social climbing, or they see it as a transactional thing. But if you see networking as that connection, and also, seeking out the people who are walking the walk, right? Like doing the things that you want to be doing, because most people are actually quite happy to help. Okay. So yeah, I think those are probably the two key things that I would say.
Absolutely. Now, I know you've hinted into some of the things that you're going to be doing next, but it will be remiss for me to not ask somebody who's got such a growth, value. What's next? What can we expect?
So I'm really seeking a lot more keynotes and those bigger stages, and bigger companies to work with. So that's kind of next for me. It's just using all of that, knowledge and leadership and finished my health coaching qualification. I've done heaps of leadership stuff. I'm looking at executive coaching, but it's just really to grow more in that space and bring a lot of that lived experience that I have to hopefully help other people. Like, I really want to help leaders to thrive without sacrificing themselves.
Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you enough for the time that you've given us on the show today, Suzanne. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for a lot of people. And I think it's written somewhere that those that have ears to hear would have heard the part that they would have wanted to hear today, especially because there's a reason why you're going through what you're going through. Because I viscerally believe in life. We're here to live, to learn, and to contribute. Yes, maybe some of the lessons that we learn might not be obviously the ones we want. It could come with a broken jaw or, surgery in your teeth or whatever it is. But that lived experience is now what is allowing you to speak from the front of the podium, and you're sending the elevator down full of goodies, showing people how they can actually rise to the top. So for what you've been and who you're becoming, Suzanne, thank you so much.
Thank you. That was a great chat.
Absolutely. For those that are watching, wow. I viscerally believe this was probably one of the most inspiring episodes we've had on the Online Prosperity Show. And I'm sure, if you're watching this right now, you're just feeling just as motivated as I am to take charge of your health, not necessarily the marathons, but to actually start living a more intentional life. Folks, I mean, if you've actually enjoyed this conversation, be sure to, first of all, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on more inspiring stories like this one. And if you're in need of a little boost in your health or your leadership journey, be sure to reach out to Suzanne. And I think, trust me, you won't regret it. I'm usually one of the first people on the front row seeing her work actually progressing. So that's the reason why I thought, no, we need to bottle all this energy. And the least that we could do is maybe record this 45-minute skit. But I think there's more where this came from. So I can't wait to actually see what you're going to do with the information that you discovered on this show today. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Online Prosperity Show. Bye for now.